Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of mining station Kepler 438b, watching the twin suns rise over the rocky landscape. 3 years they had been here, 3 long years building something from nothing on this forgotten world at the edge of human space. The coffee in his hands was real Earth coffee, not the synthetic stuff most stations served. Lisa had traded 2 weeks of overtime shifts for a single bag, but she said his birthday deserved the real thing. The mining operation had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What started as a small team of 12 had expanded to 30 crew members, all working together to extract the rare crystalline compounds that made faster-than-light travel possible. The crystals were worth more than gold, but Jake wasn't thinking about money as he watched his people start their morning shifts. He was thinking about home. Lisa Carter, his wife and chief engineer, joined him at the window. She wore a small, silver necklace that caught the morning light. It had belonged to her grandmother, the only family heirloom that survived the colony wars 15 years ago. Her whole family had died when alien raiders hit their settlement, but somehow this one, small piece of jewelry, had made it through. Lisa never took it off. "Danny's got the new extraction unit running at full capacity," she said, leaning against Jake's shoulder. "We might actually hit our quarterly targets early." Danny Phillips was barely 25, but he ran the mining operations like someone twice his age. The kid had arrived on the station with nothing but a worn duffel bag and a collection of music files that contained over 3,000 songs from Earth. He said music helped him think, and the other miners didn't mind hearing old rockin' folk, songs echoing through the tunnels while they worked. Amy Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm system from the communications center. "All teams, we've got a supply ship coming in from the Centauri system. Expected arrival in 6 hours." Amy had been with them since the beginning, keeping them connected to the rest of human space. Her desk was covered with photos of her family, back on Mars, including her 2 young sons who sent her drawings every month. Tony Blake, their security chief, walked past the observation deck carrying his morning patrol gear. Most mining stations didn't need much security, but Jake had insisted. Tony was a good man, steady and reliable. He kept his late wife's wedding ring on a chain around his neck, even though she'd been gone for 8 years. Said it reminded him that some things were worth protecting. The station hummed with quiet activity. 30 people who had become family, living and working together in the vast emptiness of space. They had built something good here, something worth being proud of. The work was hard, but they were making a difference. Every crystal they extracted helped power human ships exploring new worlds and connecting distant colonies. Jake's thoughts were interrupted by Amy's voice, now urgent and worried. "Commander Morrison to communications, priority alert." Jake and Lisa hurried to the comm center, where Amy was staring at her screens with wide eyes. "Sir, we've got multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Large vessels, unknown configuration. They're not responding to our hails." The main display showed 5 massive ships arranging themselves around the station. Jake had never seen designs like these before. They were sleek and predatory, with weapon ports that were clearly visible even at this distance. "Are they human ships?" Lisa asked, though they all knew the answer. "Negative," Amy replied. "The computer can't match their design to any known human or friendly alien configurations." Tony's voice came over the internal comm. "Commander, I'm reading weapons locks on our position. These aren't traders or explorers." Jake's military training kicked in immediately. They had mining lasers and basic defensive shields, but nothing that could stand against proper warships. "All hands, this is the commander. We have unknown vessels in our space. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill." The station's alarms began to sound, but before anyone could move, the alien ships opened fire. Not with weapons meant to destroy, but with some kind of energy beam that disabled their systems one by one. Communications went down first, then the defensive shields, then the engines that could move the station if needed. A new voice filled the air, speaking accented but understandable English. "Human mining facility, this is War Captain Vextar of the Zephyrian Consortium. Your defensive capabilities have been neutralized. You will not resist our salvage operations." Jake grabbed the emergency communicator, one of the few systems still working. "This is Commander Jake Morrison. This is a lawful human mining operation. You have no right to be here." The alien's laughter was cold and amused. "Rights are determined by strength, human. Your species is new to this region of space. You have not yet learned how things work here. We take what has value. You may leave with your lives if you do not interfere." Through the observation windows, they could see smaller ships launching from the alien vessels. Boarding craft, heading straight for the station. Jake looked around at his crew, at the faces of people who had trusted him to keep them safe. These weren't soldiers. They were miners and engineers and technicians who just wanted to do their jobs and go home to their families. "Tony, how long can we hold them off?" Jake asked. Tony checked his weapons locker and shook his head. "Maybe 10 minutes if we're lucky. We've got mining tools and some small arms, but nothing that can stop a military boarding party." Lisa squeezed Jake's hand. "What do we do?" Jake had been in combat before, back when humanity was still fighting for its place among the stars. He knew when a fight could be won and when it couldn't. This was one they couldn't win. Not with weapons. But maybe they could save lives. "We evacuate to the planet's surface," he decided. "Emergency Protocol 7. Grab essential supplies and personal items only. We'll use the mining shuttles to get everyone down safely." The crew moved quickly, each person grabbing what mattered most. Lisa took her grandmother's necklace and a photo of their wedding day. Danny saved his music collection and a guitar that had belonged to his father. Amy gathered her family photos and letters from her sons. Tony packed his wife's ring and a medal from his military service. They were loading the last shuttle when the aliens broke through the station's airlock. The boarding party was efficient and professional, like they had done this many times before. They didn't hurt anyone, but they made it clear that resistance was useless. War Captain Vextar was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and large black eyes. He examined the humans with what might have been curiosity. "You are wiser than most. Many species choose death over surrender. We will take what we came for and leave you with transport to the nearest inhabited system. Just take the crystals," Jake said. "Leave our personal belongings and equipment. These people need to get home." The alien captain tilted his head in what might have been confusion. "We take all items of value. That is how salvage operations work. Your personal possessions may have worth to others." "Those aren't valuable," Lisa protested. "They're just personal things, family items. They don't have any real worth." Vextar made a sound that might have been laughter. "Everything has worth, to someone, human, female. Your emotional attachments to objects are irrelevant." Jake watched helplessly as alien soldiers began systematically looting the station. They took the crystalline compounds, of course, but they also took everything else. Personal computers, family photos, Lisa's necklace, Danny's music collection, Tony's wife's ring, Amy's letters from her children. To the aliens, it was all just salvage to be sorted and sold later. "Please," Amy begged as an alien soldier took her family photos. "These are pictures of my children. They have no value to anyone but me." The soldier ignored her completely. Within 2 hours, the alien ships were gone, leaving the humans stranded on the planet's surface with minimal supplies and no way to contact the outside universe. The mining station hung in orbit above them, stripped bare of everything that had made it home. Jake stared up at the empty hull of their former home and made a promise that would change everything. They took the wrong things from the wrong species. Captain Sam Hughes of the patrol ship USS Defiance was 3 hours into a routine patrol when his communications officer picked up the emergency beacon. The signal was weak and broken, coming from the outer edge of human space where few ships bothered to travel. "Captain, I'm getting fragments of a distress call from the Kepler system," Lieutenant Kevin Wright reported from his station. "It's coming from mining station Kepler 438b, but the signal keeps cutting out." Sam had heard of the mining operation, a small group of brave souls trying to make a living in the dangerous frontier regions. Most people thought they were crazy to work so far from civilization, but Sam respected anyone willing to take those kinds of risks. "Set course for Kepler 438b, maximum speed," Sam ordered, "and keep trying to reach them." The journey took 18 hours, When the Defiance finally arrived at the mining station, Sam could see immediately that something was very wrong. The station was still there, orbiting the planet, but it looked empty. Dead. No lights, no movement, no signs of life. Life signs? Sam asked. I'm detecting 32 humans on the planet's surface, his science officer reported. They appear to be alive, but in some kind of temporary shelter situation. Sam took a shuttle down to the planet and found the miners huddled around, a makeshift camp near their emergency landing site. They had managed to set up basic shelters and were rationing their emergency supplies, but they were clearly not equipped for long-term survival on the harsh planet. Jake Morrison looked older than his file photo, worn down by 3 days of trying to keep his people alive in the wilderness. When he saw Sam's uniform, relief flooded his face. Captain Hughes, thank you for coming, Jake said, shaking Sam's hand. We weren't sure if anyone would find our beacon. What happened here? Sam asked, though he was already beginning to suspect the answer. Jake's expression darkened. Pirates, but not human ones, called themselves the Zephyrian Consortium. They hit us hard and fast, disabled our defenses before we could fight back. Sam nodded. Alien pirates were becoming more common in the frontier regions. Most of them targeted cargo, ships, but a few had started hitting mining operations and small colonies. Did they take your mineral stockpile? They took everything, Lisa Carter said bitterly. She was sitting nearby, staring at her hands where a necklace should have been. Not just the crystals, everything. Personal belongings, family photos, letters from home. They said it was all salvage. Danny Phillips looked up from where he was tuning a damaged radio. They took my music collection. 3,000 songs I've been collecting since I was 12 years old. Some of those recordings were from my father's old band. You can't replace stuff like that. Sam felt a cold anger building in his chest. Taking mineral stockpiles was business, even if it was illegal business, but taking personal belongings was something different. That was cruelty. We need to get you all back to civilization, Sam said. The Defiance can carry 32 people if we squeeze together. But first, I need detailed information about these aliens, ship configurations, weapons, anything you can remember. Jake and his crew provided their statements. Sam's communications officer, Kevin Wright, was busy transmitting reports back to human space. The story of what had happened at Kepler 438b spread through the communication networks like wildfire. Within hours, news stations across human space were running the story, but it wasn't just another pirate attack report. Something about the personal nature of the theft struck a nerve with people everywhere. The interview that changed everything happened 3 days later, after Sam had brought the miners back to the nearest human station. A news reporter named Maria Santos convinced Lisa Carter to tell her story on camera. Lisa sat in front of the cameras, holding a printed photo that someone had found in the station's backup files. It showed her grandmother, a woman who had died defending her family during the colony wars. This necklace was all I had left of her, Lisa said, touching her throat where the jewelry used to rest. My grandmother wore it every day for 60 years. She was wearing it when the raiders killed her trying to protect our family. It wasn't worth much money, maybe a few hundred credits, but it was priceless to me. The reporter leaned forward. And the aliens took it anyway? They said everything had value to someone, Lisa replied. They didn't care what it meant to me. To them, it was just another piece of salvage to sell. The interview was broadcast across human space, and the reaction was immediate and powerful. Comments flooded in from viewers who had their own family heirlooms, their own irreplaceable possessions that connected them to people they had loved and lost. Danny Phillips did his own interview the next day, talking about his music collection. Some of those songs were recorded by my father's band before he died, he explained. He never made it big, never got famous. But those recordings were proof that he existed, that he made something beautiful. Now they're probably being sold in some alien market to whoever will pay the most. Amy Rodriguez broke down completely during her interview when she talked about the letters from her sons. They write to me every month, she sobbed. Little drawings, stories about school telling me they miss me. Those letters were the only thing that made the loneliness bearable. And now they're gone. The story reached Earth within a week, and the response there was even stronger. Families who had lost members in various conflicts over the years saw their own pain reflected in the miners' stories. Veterans organizations began organizing protests outside alien embassies. Religious groups held prayer services for the recovery of the stolen items. Admiral Grace Palmer, commander of the Frontier Defense Fleet, found herself fielding calls from government officials, military leaders, and ordinary citizens, all asking the same question: what was being done to get the miners' belongings back? It's not about the money, Palmer explained to a gathering of senior military officers. If these aliens had stolen 1 million credits worth of crystals, it would be a crime, but people would understand it as business. But they took family photos, wedding rings, children's drawings. They attacked something deeper than wealth. They attacked memory, identity, connection. The Galactic Council, a loose confederation of alien species that tried to maintain peace in the region, issued a formal statement calling for calm and restraint. They urged humanity to pursue diplomatic channels and offered to mediate negotiations for the return of the stolen materials. But the Council's statement only made things worse. Their language was careful and diplomatic, referring to the stolen items as disputed property, and suggesting that cultural differences in the perception of ownership needed to be taken into account. Representative Kevin Wright, now serving as a liaison between the military and civilian government, read the Council's statement to a packed congressional hearing. The room erupted in angry shouts when he reached the part about cultural differences. "There's no cultural difference about theft," shouted one congressman. "They stole from our people, and they need to give it back." Admiral Palmer received her authorization for military action 2 days later. The order was signed by the president himself, but Palmer knew it had the support of virtually every human in space. "Operation Retrieval is a go," she announced to her staff. "Find every stolen item, track down every alien involved, and bring our people's belongings home." As news of the military authorization spread, something unprecedented began happening across human space. Colonial governments started diverting resources to military production. Civilian corporations volunteered their ships for conversion to military use. Private citizens organized fundraising drives to support the operation. The aliens had made a mistake that went beyond simple piracy. They had attacked the human soul, and now they were about to learn what happened when you made that kind of enemy. War Captain, Vextar, safely back in Zephyrian space, received reports of the human military buildup with confusion and mild concern. In his experience, most species accepted their losses and moved on. The fact that humans were mobilizing over what he still saw as worthless trinkets made no sense to him. He had no way of knowing that he had just started a war over the most dangerous thing you could steal from a human: the irreplaceable pieces of their hearts. Colonel Marcus Hill stood in the briefing room aboard the military ship Vengeance, studying the star charts that covered every wall. Red dots marked known Zephyrian bases, trade routes, and black market operations across 3 star systems. For 2 weeks, human intelligence networks had been working around the clock to track down every piece of stolen property from the mining station. "We've got confirmation on the first batch," reported Beth Thompson, his tactical analyst. She pointed to a space station marked on the outer rim. "Proxima Station Section 7. A black market dealer named Korvac is trying to auction military medals. The description matches Jake Morrison's father's decorations." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He had read the file on those medals. Jake's father had earned them fighting against the Arcturus Raiders 20 years ago, defending human colonies from alien attackers. The man had died protecting his family and his species. And now, his medals were being sold like common trinkets. "Alex, what's the security situation at Proxima Station?" Marcus asked his reconnaissance specialist. Alex Turner pulled up the intelligence reports. "Moderate security, mostly focused on preventing smuggling disputes. The station management doesn't ask too many questions as long as the bribes keep flowing. We can get a team in quietly." Dr. Rachel Kim, the team's xenopsychologist, looked up from her research tablet. "Colonel, I've been studying the Zephyrian mindset. They genuinely don't understand why we're pursuing this. In their culture, once something is taken in a raid, it belongs to the raiders. The original owner's emotional connection is considered irrelevant. That's their mistake, Marcus replied grimly. Ready the insertion team. We're going to show them exactly how irrelevant our emotions are. The operation at Proxima Station went perfectly. Marcus's team infiltrated the black market auction, just as Korvac was displaying Jake's father's medals to potential buyers. The alien dealer was describing them as primitive military decorations from a minor species when the human special forces team struck. The aliens in the auction house never knew what hit them. Marcus's soldiers moved like ghosts, stunning guards and securing the area before anyone could raise an alarm. Korvac found himself face to face with 6 armed humans in full combat gear. Those medals don't belong to you, Marcus said quietly, his weapon trained on the alien dealer. Korvac's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. I purchased them legally from Zephyrian salvage crews. The transaction is recorded and proper. Legal according to who? Beth Thompson demanded, as she carefully recovered the medals from the display case. Each one was exactly as Jake had described it, down to the small dent in the service ribbon where his father had been hit by shrapnel. According to salvage law, Korvac protested, items taken in legitimate raids become property of the raiders. This is accepted practice throughout the galaxy. Alex Turner stepped forward, his face cold with anger. Those medals were earned by a man who died protecting his family from aliens like you. They represent courage, sacrifice, and honor. They're not salvage. The alien dealer looked genuinely puzzled. But they are simply metal and fabric. They have no practical use. Why do you risk violence to retrieve them? Dr. Kim answered before anyone else could speak. Because they're not just metal and fabric to us. They're memory made physical. They're proof that someone we loved lived and died for something important. When you steal them, you're trying to erase our history. The team extracted successfully with the medals, but the operation had unexpected consequences. Word spread quickly through the criminal networks that humans were actively hunting down their stolen belongings. Other alien criminals who had purchased items from the Zephyrian raid began to panic. Within days, human intelligence was receiving tips from across the galaxy. A trader on Vega Prime had Danny's music files on data crystals he was trying to sell. A collector on the Centauri trade hub had acquired Lisa's grandmother's necklace. Amy's family photos had been sold to an art dealer who specialized in exotic cultural artifacts. Each recovery operation was swift and precise. Human special forces teams appeared without warning, recovered their people's belongings, and vanished again before local authorities could respond. The aliens involved were left confused and frightened, unable to understand why humans would risk so much for what seemed like worthless items. War Captain Vextar received the first reports of human military actions with disbelief. In his experience, most species accepted losses and moved on with their lives. The few that sought revenge usually did so through official diplomatic channels, filing complaints and requesting negotiations. They are attacking civilian traders over personal trinkets, his intelligence officer reported. 17 separate incidents in the past week. They take back their items and leave, but they're causing panic in the black market networks. Vextar studied the reports with growing unease. Are they demanding the return of the mineral stockpiles as well? No, Captain. They only seem interested in personal belongings, family photos, jewelry, music collections, letters, items with no significant monetary value. This made no sense to Vexitar. In Zephyrian culture, practical considerations always came first. Personal attachments to objects were seen as weakness, something that made individuals vulnerable and easy to exploit. The idea that an entire species would mobilize military forces over sentimental items was beyond his understanding. Perhaps we should return their belongings, suggested his second-in-command, if it will end their aggressive actions. Vextar's pride rebelled against the suggestion. We are not thieves to be intimidated by primitive emotional responses. If they want their trinkets back, they can purchase them through proper channels. This decision proved to be another critical mistake. When human intelligence learned that the Zephyrians were offering to sell back the stolen items rather than return them, the response was immediate and furious. Admiral Grace Palmer called an emergency meeting of all senior military commanders. "They want us to buy back our own stolen property," she announced to the assembled officers. "Personal belongings taken from our people in an illegal raid, and they think we should pay them for the privilege of getting them back." The room erupted in angry voices. These were professional military officers, trained to remain calm under pressure, but the casual cruelty of the alien offer pushed them beyond their limits. "It's not about the money," Palmer continued when the room quieted. "It's about the principle. They're treating our people's most precious possessions like merchandise. They're putting price tags on grief, on love, on memory itself." Intelligence. Reports continued to flow in. Some of the stolen items were being destroyed by aliens who feared human retaliation. Others were being moved deeper into Zephyrian space, beyond the reach of quick raids. Time was running out to recover everything intact. Beth Thompson's analysis painted a grim picture. At the current rate of destruction and dispersal, we'll lose 60% of the personal items within another month. The aliens are starting to view them as liability rather than profit. Colonel Hill made the recommendation that would change everything. "We need to go to the source, stop chasing individual items, and go after the organization that stole them in the first place." "That means invading Zephyrian space," Palmer replied. "That means war." Marcus nodded grimly. "They started this war when they stole pieces of our people's souls. We're just going to finish it." The authorization came from the highest levels of human government within hours. Operation Retrieval was expanding from targeted raids to full military action against the Zephyrian Consortium. Fleet mobilization orders went out across human space. Dr. Kim submitted her final psychological assessment of the situation. "The Zephyrians still don't understand what they've done," she wrote. "They see this as a conflict over property rights. They have no concept that they've attacked human identity itself. This fundamental misunderstanding will be their downfall." As human warships began gathering at staging areas throughout the frontier, War Captain Vextar finally began to grasp the magnitude of his error. But by then it was far too late to prevent the storm that was coming for him and his people. General Patricia Ross stood before the largest gathering of human military leaders in 50 years. Representatives from every major colony, every defense fleet, and every military organization had come together in the Great Assembly Hall on Earth. The holographic displays around the room showed the massive buildup of human forces across the galaxy. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we're witnessing is unprecedented in human history," General Ross began. "In the past 30 days, civilian colonies have voluntarily converted 40% of their industrial capacity to military production. Cargo companies have offered their entire fleets for military conversion. Private citizens have donated over 2 billion credits to support operations." Commander Luke Anderson, captain of the battleship Titan, raised his hand. "General, my ship's crew has tripled with volunteers. We have engineers, technicians, even teachers and shopkeepers asking to serve. I've never seen anything like it." "That's exactly my point," Ross replied. "This isn't just a military operation anymore. This has become something that touches every human in space. The question is, why?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Judge Advocate Ryan Foster, the military's top legal officer, had been studying the cultural impact of the theft. "General, I've reviewed over 10,000 personal messages sent to military recruitment offices. The pattern is consistent. People aren't joining because they want adventure or glory. They're joining because they see themselves in those miners." Foster activated a holographic display showing message excerpts. Sarah Martinez from New Dallas writes, "My grandfather's watch was the only thing I saved when raiders hit our colony. If someone stole it from me, I'd want the whole human race to help get it back." David Cooper from the Luna shipyard says, "Those aliens don't understand that some things can't be replaced with money. They need to learn." The room was quiet, as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about Jake Morrison's father's medals or Lisa Carter's grandmother's necklace. This was about every human who had ever lost someone they loved and kept a memento to remember them by. Specialist Carla Nash, the military's top cyber warfare expert, provided the tactical update. We've identified the main Zephyrian storage facility where most of the stolen items are being held. It's on their primary trading station in the Rigel system, heavily defended and considered impregnable. Define impregnable, Commander Anderson asked. Shields that can withstand bombardment from a full battle fleet. Weapon systems that outrange our longest-range missiles. Automated defense platforms that respond faster than human reflexes. And it's protected by the entire Zephyrian defense fleet. General Ross studied the tactical data. Casualties for a direct assault? Estimated 70% losses for the attacking fleet, Nash replied grimly. The room fell silent. 70% casualties meant that most of the people in this room would die in the attempt. Their families would lose fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters. For jewelry and photographs and music collections. Commander Anderson spoke first. My crew is ready, General. Every single one of them volunteered, knowing the risks. Mine too, added Captain Nicole Hayes of the assault ship Thunderbolt. They understand what we're fighting for. One by one, every military commander in the room volunteered their ships and crews for the mission. Not because they were ordered to, but because they believed in what they were doing. The Zephyrian response came 3 days later. War Captain Vextar, now promoted to fleet commander after the success of his raid, sent a message through diplomatic channels. His image appeared on screens throughout human space, translated into dozens of languages. Humans of the inner systems, Vexitar began, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who believed he held all the advantages. Your aggressive actions against legitimate salvage operations have escalated beyond reason. We offer one final opportunity for peaceful resolution. The alien commander gestured to something off-screen, and the camera pulled back to show a display case filled with familiar objects. Lisa's necklace glinted under the lights. Danny's music files were stacked on a shelf. Amy's family photos were spread across a table like playing cards. These items will be returned to you in exchange for appropriate compensation. 1 million credits per object, plus damages for the disruption your military actions have caused to our operations. This offer expires in 72 hours. The reaction across human space was immediate and explosive. Vextar had just put price tags on people's most precious memories. He was treating grief like a commodity to be bought and sold. Jake Morrison, still recovering on the space station where Captain Hughes had brought his crew, watched the broadcast, with his wife Lisa. When Vextar lifted her grandmother's necklace and casually examined it like a piece of merchandise, Lisa broke down completely. He's holding it like it's nothing, she sobbed. Like my grandmother's life meant nothing. Like my family's death was just business to him. Jake held his wife close, but his eyes never left the screen. The alien commander was smiling now, clearly, pleased with what he saw as a clever negotiation strategy. He had no idea that he had just signed his own death warrant. The human government's response was swift and unanimous. President Jennifer Walsh addressed the nation from the steps of the Capitol building, with the flags of every human colony flying behind her. To the Zephyrian Consortium and their war captain Vextar, she began, her voice carrying across every human world simultaneously. There is no price that can be placed on memory. There is no amount of money that can buy back a piece of someone's heart. Your offer is rejected. The president paused, looking directly into the camera. You have 72 hours to return every stolen item, unconditionally and without compensation. If you refuse, you will face the full might of humanity united, in righteous anger. In the Rigel system, Vextar received the human response with confusion and growing alarm. His intelligence officers were reporting massive fleet movements throughout human space. Ships were converging on the frontier from every direction, more vessels than had ever been assembled for a single operation. They're willing to start a war over personal trinkets, his second-in-command observed with disbelief. Let them come, Vextar replied, though his confidence was beginning to waver. Our defenses are impregnable. Their emotional weakness will be their downfall. But even as he spoke, Vextar was beginning to understand that he had made a fundamental miscalculation. The reports from his spies painted a picture of a species unlike any he had encountered before. Humans weren't just mobilizing their military. They were mobilizing their entire civilization. Factories that had made civilian goods were now producing weapons and ammunition. Shipyards that built cargo haulers were converting them into warships. Scientists were working around the clock to develop new technologies for the coming battle. Children were collecting scrap metal to help build more ships. Dr. Rachel Kim's final intelligence report reached human commanders just as the fleet began its final approach to Zephyrian space. "The enemy still doesn't understand what they're facing," she wrote. "They see this as a conflict between their military and ours. They don't realize they're about to face an entire species that has decided some things are worth any price to protect." As the human fleet took its final positions for the assault on the Rigel system, every ship carried the same message painted on its hull: "Return what you stole, or face the consequences." The aliens were about to learn that there were worse things than dying in battle. Sometimes the worst thing was discovering you had made an enemy of people who would never, ever stop coming for what belonged to them. Fleet Admiral Jonathan Pierce stood on the bridge of the command ship Enterprise, watching the largest human fleet in history drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the Rigel system. 200 warships, 50 converted civilian vessels, and countless support craft spread across space like an angry constellation. But what made this fleet truly terrifying wasn't its size, it was its purpose. Jake Morrison stood beside the Admiral, wearing the uniform of a technical advisor. The mining crew had insisted on coming along despite the danger. They wanted to be there when their belongings were recovered. Lisa Carter was in the ship's medical bay, serving as a volunteer nurse. Danny Phillips was helping with communications, and Amy Rodriguez was working with the intelligence teams. Even Tony Blake had found a role, helping coordinate security operations. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian station," reported the communications officer. War Captain Vextar appeared on the main screen, still confident despite the massive human fleet surrounding his supposedly impregnable fortress. Behind him, the stolen items were displayed like trophies, a deliberate insult that made every human in the fleet burn with anger. "Human fleet, you are trespassing in Zephyrian space," Vextar announced. "Withdraw immediately or face the consequences of your aggression." Admiral Pierce stepped forward, his voice calm but carrying the weight of an entire species behind it. "War Captain Vextar, you are in possession of stolen property belonging to human citizens. Return those items immediately, and we will withdraw." The UA alien commander laughed, a sound that was harsh and mocking. "You would risk hundreds of ships and thousands of lives for these worthless trinkets? Your species is even more foolish than we believed." Jake Morrison asked permission to speak, and the Admiral nodded. The former mining station commander looked directly at the alien who had destroyed his people's lives. "Those trinkets represent the people we've loved and lost," Jake said quietly. "They're pieces of our hearts, our memories, our history. When you stole them, you didn't just take our possessions. You tried to erase who we are." Vextar's expression showed genuine confusion. "You speak of objects as if they were living beings. This emotional weakness is why your species will always be inferior. You're about to find out just how weak we are," Admiral Pierce replied. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The human fleet didn't just attack the Zephyrian defenses, they systematically dismantled them. Every weapon platform, every shield generator, every defensive system was targeted with the precision of surgeons and the fury of a hurricane. Captain Nicole Hayes led the first wave of assault ships through the station's outer defenses. Her ship, Thunderbolt, took massive damage, but she pressed forward, knowing that somewhere in that station was a child's drawing that meant everything to a grieving mother. Commander Luke Anderson's battleship Titan anchored the main assault, its massive guns silencing the station's primary weapons. When his weapons officer asked which targets to prioritize, Anderson's answer was simple: "Everything that stands between us and our people's belongings." Sergeant First Class Brandon Clark led the first boarding party through the station's hull. His team moved with deadly efficiency, not to kill aliens but to reach the storage areas where human possessions were being held. They fought through corridor after corridor, driven by the knowledge that they were fighting for more than victory. They were fighting for memory itself. The Zephyrian defenders were skilled and well-equipped, but they were fighting for profit and territory. The humans were fighting for love and loss and the connections that made life worth living. There was no contest. Jake Morrison joined the boarding party that reached the main storage facility. When he saw his father's medals displayed, in a case like museum pieces, 20 years of grief and pride and loss crashed over him like a wave. He carefully removed each medal, checking for damage, remembering the day his father had earned them fighting against aliens who thought humans were weak. Lisa Carter found her grandmother's necklace in a collection of primitive jewelry, marked, "For sale to collectors." When she held it again, she could almost feel her grandmother's presence, the strength of a woman who had faced death defending her family. The necklace was exactly as she remembered it, undamaged and precious beyond any price. Danny Phillips discovered his music files in a data storage unit, labeled as cultural artifacts of unknown value. As he downloaded the files back to his personal device, he could hear his father's voice singing in one of the old recordings. The aliens had thought they were selling noise, but they had been holding pieces of a man's soul. Amy Rodriguez found her family photos scattered across a table, ready to be sold as examples of human domestic arrangements. She gathered each picture carefully, looking at her sons' faces, reading their handwritten messages on the backs. The aliens had seen curiosities, but she saw love made visible. War Captain Vexitar was captured trying to escape with a case of what he considered the most valuable items. When human soldiers opened the case, they found wedding rings, military medals, children's artwork, and love letters. To Vexitar, they were his most profitable salvage. To the humans, they represented the deepest connections possible between sentient beings. "I don't understand," Vexitar said as Brandon Clark's team secured him. "They're just objects. Why would your species risk so much for objects?" Jake Morrison answered him, holding his father's medals in hands that shook with emotion. "Because they're not objects to us. They're proof that the people we loved existed, that they mattered, that their lives had meaning. When you steal them, you're trying to steal our history, our connections, our very identity." "But they have no practical value," the alien protested. "That's where you're wrong," Jake replied. "They have the most practical value possible. They make us remember who we are and why we fight. They connect us to everyone who came before us and everyone who will come after us. They are what make us human." The recovery operation took 6 hours. Every stolen item was found, cataloged, and returned to its rightful owner. The human fleet withdrew as promised, leaving behind a Zephyrian station that was damaged but not destroyed, and aliens who finally understood the magnitude of their mistake. News of the recovery spread across human space faster than the ships could return home. Celebrations erupted on every human world, not because they had won a battle, but because they had proven that some things were worth any price to protect. The mining station Kepler 438b was rebuilt within 6 months, this time with proper defenses and a full military garrison. Lisa Carter wore her grandmother's necklace as she supervised the construction of new defensive systems. Danny Phillips's music played through the station's speakers as workers rebuilt what had been lost. Jake Morrison kept his father's medals in a place of honor, alongside a new decoration awarded by a grateful government. The Zephyrian Consortium dissolved within a year, its member species seeking individual peace treaties with humanity. The galaxy learned a new rule that was taught in schools and repeated in diplomatic academies. Never, under any circumstances, take what belongs to a Deathworlder. Not because they'll fight you for it, but because they'll never stop fighting until they get it back. And in the end, the aliens learned the most important lesson of all. The things that have no price are often the things most worth dying for.